Once long ago, there existed a hero in a video game. And this hero had to tackle the dangers of darkness and demise, lurking both in and out of his game. From the monsters and trials in the green Faron Woods, to the critics screeching about the linear, overused dungeon formula that had apparently run its course. He fought back and back against all of it, because he knew he was meant to be more than a mere Korok pooper scooper. He was meant for more. And we all owe this hero an apology. So, we need to talk about Skyward Sword. And I'll be honest, I used to be one of those critics at the time this amazing game came out. It was a tough spot for the game, to be honest. Coming off of the heels of Twilight Princess and some other releases, there was already a high ceiling for the next Zelda game to live up to. And lo and behold, we get Skyward Sword. All of a sudden, critical reviews came pouring in, and honestly, rightfully so to an extent. The swordplay mechanics were a bit cumbersome at first with the motion sensor. The game did kind of max out its linear capabilities within the story and progression, and the complaints regarding backtracking to previous locations and the time trials, oof, those time trials, were valid. But that's not gonna stop me from standing on business in defending this game. Because the reality is that we have now had two completely open-world Zelda games that, while fantastic and were a somewhat needed change for the formula, have kind of run their course to an extent as well. I'm seeing more and more video essays calling for the old Zelda formula to come back that made the series so special. I'm seeing more and more videos come out really digging into Tears of the Kingdom now that the rose-tinted glasses have been removed since its release. I'm not going to go on for too long criticizing these two games, because that's not what this video is about. But what I do want to say is that these games' lack of dungeons, bare-bones storytelling, and quite empty open worlds and absence of real Zelda content made the HD remaster of Skyward Sword that came out in 2021 feel that much sweeter. And I'll be honest, I was so deep in that hater camp back in the day that I actually didn't finish the game back when I had it on the Wii when it came out. But when the remaster came out, and my itch for that traditional Zelda feel was building up stronger and stronger, I decided to give it another shot. And holy shit, this game was actually great. First of all, the intro to the game felt magical? Like, magical in a Ghibli kind of sense. The game starts in a way that other typical Zelda games kinda do. You get a little lore on the history of a war with darkness and monsters, and then a little introduction to Zelda, in which this is one of my favorite representations of Zelda in all the games. But we'll get to that later. And then we meet Link, and this moment genuinely made me crack up upon his introduction. And I just loved something about the loft wings. They had such a magical yet goofy feel to them that had such a charm. I almost wish that these birds were real. I don't know about you, but my mind was blown when I realized that these birds were based on birds in the real world called shoebills. This was so amazing, and it totally made me view the world and animals in a much more mystical sense. I don't know, I just really loved that it was based off of something real. But anyway, even if the art direction didn't quite mirror the Ghibli vibe, I actually really came to admire these character designs. I think this might even be my favorite design of Link in any game ever. I'm a big fan of how they gave Link a bit of an older teenage look, and think this more mature design really suited the narrative. And this representation of Link and the other characters just felt so expressive. This made the connection between Zelda and Link in this game feel so genuine. From her feisty personality and trying to get Link out of bed and not having much hope in him winning the Loftwing race, to her compassion and gentleness in apologizing for pushing him off the edge and supporting him in his knightliness, even if he has a habit of sleeping in. This gave off just such a wholesome and authentic vibe to their relationship that I have rarely seen in other Zelda games. And then you've got Groose, and the town of Skyloft itself. Having a rival like Groose who's a piece of shit at the beginning, and having a small academy and shops and houses on this little sky island was more immersive than I remembered when playing over 10 years ago. And they didn't know it, but this Skyloft theme would be that one background song that every gaming YouTuber uses in the background of their videos. And while winning the race against Groose was hard, there was a genuine motivation behind it that made you really want to win so that dumbass Groose wouldn't get to spend alone time with Zelda. So you win, and the intro is wrapped up in a pretty solid and compelling way, as you journey to save Zelda after she's been sucked up by a storm, and you meet your over-hated companion in this game, Fi. And we will get to her later. When Zelda first mentions the surface, I remember as a kid being taken aback at how big this place was going to be underneath the clouds. And it didn't really disappoint. Sure, I wish there was a bit more variety of places to go and whatnot, but for what it was, I was pretty content. Faron Woods, Eldin Volcano, and Lanayru Desert were all fairly well designed and got the job done. I can concede that they weren't too groundbreaking in terms of design and colors and having that wow factor. But I really like how, even when you backtrack to these places in the story and go through their dungeons, there's always something different about them. The 3 visits you make to each place in the game have different goals and gameplay opportunities within each episode. With Faron Woods, you have an ancient tree dungeon, followed up by a mystically spiritual lake dungeon on your second visit. Eldin Volcano also switches it up a bit, and I loved Lanayru Desert most because the first typical sand temple was great, but the second one being an awesome sand ship with a kraken-like boss was freaking epic, and I'll stand on these dungeons as being really, really good. And we gotta talk about my man Ghirahim, probably one of the top 5 favorite villains in any Zelda ever. You heard me. I remember when trailers and teasers came out showing him and I was like, okay cool, he'll probably be like a final boss or something I'll fight later. But no, he's the first boss and I was scared shitless facing him. This guy had an aura about him that kinda reminded me of Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter. A whimsically menacing and flamboyant villain who also had that crazy angry side. And his design was phenomenal. The slender physique with that white bang and tall stature really intimidated me. And I think my hidden love for the motion sword mechanics bloomed when I faced him in that first fight. Trying to scout out his openings with his own swordplay and deflecting his attacks depending on what he threw at you really made me feel like I was Link and that I was in danger. Like I was truly dueling another dangerous swordsman who could kill me. And not to mention the cutscenes were fluid and smooth and honestly had greater cinematography than I remember. I especially remember this one scene after the Lanayru temple where you reunite with Zelda again to get her harp, but then Ghirahim shows up and an epic ass fight scene ensues. Impa having to hold him back as he slashes and slashes, and Zelda apologizing to Link for not being able to reconnect with him as she steps back into the portal was just, ugh. This was intense, and these scenes happen all over the fucking game. And the way the characters move had so much detail and intention. Even the little moments when Link takes a deep breath contemplates and eventually walks into the dungeon. I don't know why I loved this as much as I did. The animation was some of the most dynamic I've ever seen in a Zelda game, especially in the cutscenes, and as I said before, with the facial expressions. I'm going to be getting into my favorite part of the game now, so please bear with me as I gush over this interaction between Link and Zelda once you reunite in the past at the Temple of Time. It was obviously interesting hearing the history of the war in the past and the revelation that Link is the chosen hero of the sky and that Zelda is the reincarnation of the goddess of the sky, Hylia. But what stuck with me most is what Zelda tells Link later, that she wishes they could have just been living a chill and simple life up in Skyloft, that they didn't have to bear this burden of destiny and responsibility toward the world. And she apologizes for roping you into this responsibility, but that no matter what, she will always be your Zelda. Ugh, I'm not done. And she tells you about how she will have to fall into an eternal slumber in order to keep the seal of darkness closed, and that she was always the one to wake you up from slumber, such as for the Loftwing race and other stuff, but that she hopes that you will now be the one to wake her up this time, once you defeat Demise. This is what I'm talking about when I say that we need to owe this game an apology. This writing and emotion got overlooked by the movement against the Zelda formula, the movement against traditional linearity, the movement against classic Zelda goodness. We got so caught up in the hate that we missed the beauty of this game's treasured moments. We missed out on the triumphant redemption of Groose in helping you defeat the behemoth at the sealed grounds. We missed the epicness of the rivaled clashes with Ghirahim in knocking him down from platform to platform in your final encounter. We missed out on the emotional side of Link that we rarely get to see ever, when Zelda gets crystallized into slumber. And finally, we missed out on one of the greatest final bosses in any Zelda game ever, in which it's not in a deep, dark dungeon, it's not on a tall rooftop, nor in a crazy big battleground. It's here. I can't tell you how I felt when seeing this beautiful location for the final boss. I know it doesn't last this way for long, but just seeing the serenity of the blue sky and clouds going on for what looked like forever really brought me to capitalize my love for this game. It reminded me of the final world in Kingdom Hearts 3, as well as Tanjiro's soul representation in Demon Slayer Mugen Train. But this came first! And as the boss field turns into a dark and stormy atmosphere, you raise your sword to the heavens to get that lightning strike overhead. Oh, the immersion! You are the hero of the sky, and it's your responsibility to right this evil so that you can protect your childhood friend and love Zelda, your hometown of Skyloft, the robots in Lanayru Desert, the frickin' cute-ass little Momog things in the Elden Volcano, Impa, Groose, everybody. You as the player feel an emotional connection to these characters, and they matter. So it's time. Time to end it. And you do. And all is fairly well and good, even though Demise lets you know that he will always be darkness and hatred reincarnate, and will follow you again and again. Such a smart way of foreshadowing the reincarnations of Ganondorf in later games. And you have to say goodbye to Fi, the robotic character who has been your companion on this journey and who a lot of people criticize for over-explaining and holding your hand in the journey. But I have another take on this. Fi cared about you the whole time, not just as a chosen hero, but as Link. Sure, she tried to tell you the same thing a lot, but she wanted the best for you. And as she says goodbye, she thanks you and reveals to you that she started to feel something us humans call happiness. Ugh, fuck, this game is too good. I mean, I never hated Fi really, but this farewell moment and Link's sad reaction to it just really hit home and gave her character a whole new meaning and love. And not just Fi, but Impa and Zelda. The connection between these two really drove home the impact these two had on the entire story. They weren't just meaningless side characters to be protected off screen. as shown in the credits, they were crucial in sealing away Demise and having Zelda recollect her memories of being a goddess. And the farewell between them, to Zelda realizing in the present that Impa was the old lady all along, was nothing short of an emotional chef's kiss. All in all, this game was beautiful. It wasn't perfect, but what game is? This game has so much love put into it. From the efforts to make you feel like a swordsman of the sky, to some of the best and most authentic characters in any Zelda game ever, to intricate and detailed dungeons and areas that always had a new challenge for you to tackle, to the growth of Link, a sleepyhead and spaced out teenager who finally had to accept growing up and launching into his enemies head on. Something that even Ghirahim and Demise couldn't wrap their heads around a human being capable of. So, can you join me for a second in something? I'd like you to raise your hand to the sky, make a fist in the air, and whatever you're going through right now, say to yourself, I can do it. I can do this. Just like our hero of the sky would want for you to do. Our unsung hero, our Link, our Skyward Sword.